ICW fans gather around for a trip down Nostalgia Avenue as I will be having another, for the first time in a long time, a VHS review of a past ICW show. I'm not sure if the show was titled Ultimate Jeopardy, which was usually the name of an ECW show, but this particular ICW event took place back on April 26, 2002 from the Elks Lodge on Queens Boulevard. The Elks Lodge, not where wrestling's currently held, not that particular Elks Lodge. But I was at this show myself, but the videotape version of this show begins with Frankie Stars outside the building with some fans. Among them was Alex, who kind of looked like Matt Hardy, and I wish I could find that dude, because I haven't seen him in years at a wrestling show. Stars opens up a can of beer, and he says to Jack Sabbath, "Jack, this is for you, because after tonight, you're not going to be able to afford one of these anymore." So, Stars tells the fans that, if anyone says they think you guys are ring crew, and they try to go in through the back door, Stars encounters a member of Atlas Security, and the guard tells Stars, the ring is already set up, and if these guys want to come in, they're going to have to get in the front. And eventually they try to get in through another door, and I think Stars couldn't get it open. So then they come through the front door, and right by the front door is then heel commentator L. Shoes, who later became Maximus Sex Power. And as Stars is trying to get into the front door, he says to Shoes, "Out of the way, idiot!" And Shoes says, "Do you know who I am?" And Stars says, "Who cares?" And then another member of Atlas Security, who actually used to work at my job, Joseph Tamburello. I wonder where that guy is. And he stops Stars, and he's told the same thing as the other guard did earlier. He says, "Hey, the ring's been set up for hours, And eventually, Stars and I guess the rest of the fans went back outside, and then they showed the introduction of the videotape. Nice video package. Then all of a sudden, we see Danny DeMonto in the building, and he's saying, "Where am I going to find a tag team partner?" And he sees a bunch of people sitting down. Among them was Elaine Simon, my friend Elaine Simon, way before I met her. And Danny asks who wanted to be his partner, and they all said, "Hell no, fat ass." Danny eventually asked ECW referee Jim Molyneux, the late Balls Mahoney, and Mahoney tells Danny, "I'll tell you what, I won't be your partner, but I might run in on your match." Then Mahoney sees the Rainmaker from USA Pro Wrestling fame, and he offered to be his partner, and Rainmaker says to him, "You actually wrestle?" And then Danny eventually yells to him, "Shut up!" And he says, "I need a tag team partner." And Danny says to him, "Come think of it, you're fat, you're ugly, and you're probably still a virgin." Danny tried to get the all-around best Xavier, and Xavier smiled and walked away from him. Danny then asks commentator L. Shoes to be his partner, and Shoes says, "Hey, I'm too cool to hang with a guy like you." And Danny says, "Why is everyone turning me down?" And Shoes says, "Oh, you're a loser, you're fat." He says, Danny says, "Yeah, but you're a commentator." And Shoes says, "Yeah, but I'm a cool commentator." And then Danny looks in the camera and says, "Even the commentator turned me down." Then Danny tried to ask the camera person to be his partner, and the camera person's like getting away from Danny at that point. Danny then encounters Red the Machine Young says to him, "Look into that camera and tell them you're going to be my tag team partner tonight." And Red Young says, "You gotta be kidding me, I would team up with someone like you." And Red says, "Well, last time you hit the gym, the buffet table?" And Danny says he was slim, trim, 125 pounds. And Young says, "125? Must have been when you was a baby, 125. And Red Young said he had a surprise for Danny that night. And then Danny's walking away, and he said, "Red the Machine Young turned me down. I didn't want him as a partner anyway." So then we finally get to the beginning of the event, and Steven DeAndre's in the ring, and they played the national anthem, which was a recording of it. And we opened up the matches with a tag team match, which saw the Cash Money Brothers, the late Jimmy Hustler and Pimp 2009, I believe that might have been Rockshot 337 without his mask. And they were accompanied to the ring by Red the Machine Young. And their opponents were Day DeMonto, who finally got a tag team partner, and it was none other than ECW's prodigy, Tom Marquez. Danny basically was in the match most of the time for his team. He eventually tags Marquez in, but Marquez turns on him, leaves him for dead, and walks out of the match. The Cash Money Brothers capitalized and they defeated DeMonto and Marquez to pick up the win. Next up, it's singles competition as we see the arsonist, Tim Arson, as he went one-on-one with Kid Cruel, who was also known as Mike the Shooter Cruel. Kid Cruel, Mike Cruel, as you know, was the son of independent wrestling legend Bodyguard for Hire. A pretty decent match between these two guys. Arson later became the Zombie, wrestled as the Zombie on ECW on Sci-Fi, and he worked indies after that under that character. But in this match, Kid Cruel defeated Tim Arson, and Arson, real name Tim Roberts, or was it Tim Robbins? He eventually passed away. I don't know if it was 2015. Probably wrong on that. Okay, next on the videotape, we see El Shoes attempted to interview the Christopher Street Connection, Mace Mendoza and Buff E. And they were trying to talk about their match with The Solution, Papa Don and Havoc. And eventually Buff E says to Shoes, can I see your, can I see your mic? He says, yeah, here's the mic. He says, no, your mic. He wasn't referring to the microphone, folks. And eventually they took it away, and Shoes eventually ran out of the room. And then we got on with the tag team match as a Solution. Papa Don and Havoc do battle with the Christopher Street Connection of Mace Mendoza and Buff E. Pretty entertaining match here. The turning point came when the Solution really had things going, when all of a sudden out came, here's a name from indie wrestling's past, Judas Young, who was injured by the Solution months earlier, and apparently his arm had healed up, and eventually, I forgot the guy's name, but I think he was one half of the Moondogs 2000. He came out, he spears Havoc, and Christopher Street Connection capitalized, and they defeated the Solution to win the match, and the Solution run to the back to try to catch Judas Young and Wenzel. That's who they named him. They was named. But then all of a sudden, out comes Chris Divine and the all-around best Xavier interrupt Christopher Street Connection's little celebration of their win. Xavier says, hey, this is sick. And Xavier says the Impact Championship Wrestling, and I forgot what, I think he ended up calling them bitches. And Buffy says, excuse me, but did you call me a bitch? And then Mace Mendoza says, he called us bitches. And Buffy says, hey, if we're the bitches, how come every time you're in the ring, you're on your back? And then Xavier and Divine took exception and did a number on the Christopher Street Connection, which prompted Low-Key and Boogaloo to come out. And Low-Key made light of the fact that Xavier looks like AC Slater, who was played by Mario Lopez on Saved by the Bell, and that he also looks like The Rock. And Low-Key eventually called Xavier Gaylord, and then eventually the Christopher Street Connection, I think, kissed Xavier on the cheek and did the same to Divine. And then basically that was just to add fuel to their match later in the show. Then it was a four-way elimination matchup, as we saw Quiet Storm versus Ghost Shadow versus Abunai versus Lowrider, where the winner of this match would be crowned the very first ICW Super Juniors champion. Ghost Shadow got eliminated first. Then Abunai was eliminated. And then Lowrider ended up pinning Quiet Storm to become the first ever ICW Super Juniors champion. Then at that point, ICW's head honcho, founding father, Jack Sabbath, comes out with a little, asks his dynasty for a little, to come to the ring for a State of the Dynasty address, which was Abunai, the Prodigy Tom Marquez, and Damian Dragon. And Sabbath tells Marquez, the last month you had a chance to bring the heavyweight title back to the Dynasty, but you lost to Boogaloo in the first round, you didn't advance. Jack tells Damian that his feud with Striker's got to end. Jack turns his attention to Abonai and says, the last 4 times you were out here, you got pinned. Tonight, you had a chance to bring home the Super Juniors Championship. You couldn't even do that. And then he says, you are the weakest link. You must go. And Dragon and Marquez do a number on Abonai and literally ripped the Dynasty shirt right off of him. After Abonai was tossed from the ring, Sabbath tells Marquez and Dragon, you know, please step out of the ring. I got another piece of business to take care of. And he says, forget. And he says, and he points out Frankie Stars in the crowd. And, you know, I'm sorry to say this, all apologies when I say this. DJ Anthony, who would provide music at ICW and USA Pro Wrestling events, he always provided terrible microphones, and you couldn't really understand what everybody's saying. But eventually, Frankie Stars, Sabbath asks Frankie Stars, do you have a ticket? And Stars says he snuck into the building with some of the crowd. And eventually, I forgot what Sabbath says. Stars hits the ring. Yeah, Stars hits the ring, tries to hit the ring, but then 2 members out of security are stopping him, and they're grabbing the guardrail to put him back over the rail. And then Sabbath says to Stars, hey, you want me that bad? Security, let him go. Stars hits the ring, and he and Sabbath start to brawl, and Stars hits Sabbath with an enziguri, and he's getting the better end of it until Dragon and Marquez finally come in the ring, and the three, Dragon, Marquez, and Sabbath do a number on Stars, and I think Sabbath took his belt off and put it around Stars' neck and hung him over the top rope, and they used a chair on him. Then, back to the action as we see the Amazing Red and the SAT, Jose and Joel Maximo, they come to the ring. Joel's got the microphone, and he tells the crowd that it's Red's birthday, and then he tells Red, hey, I love you, but I'm not gonna take it easy on you. Jose takes the microphone and says, I'm not gonna take it easy on you either. Red gets the microphone and says, and neither will I. And they have a 3-way dance with each other. Very good matchup, which saw Joel Maximo defeat Amazing Red and Jose Maximo. Okay, I know they did go to intermission at the show, but as far as the videotape is concerned, yeah, we see Crazy Ivan, who was like one of the most hated wrestlers of the indies back in the early to mid 2000s, and you know, he noticed a sign, somebody had a sign in the crowd that said Crazy Ivan is a little bitch, and Ivan ripped the sign up right in front of that person. Ivan gets the microphone, goes on his racial tirade, running every racial slur out on the microphone. Eventually, people start flooding the ring with garbage. A point where there used to be a KFC across the street from the building, and I don't know if it was an empty bag or full bag. Someone threw it in the ring, and Ivan threw it back into the crowd. And then all of a sudden, out comes Ivan's scheduled opponent, Prince Nana. Nana takes the microphone, and again, lousy microphones DJ Anthony provided for the shows. And Nana eventually called Ivan a retard. And Ivan took the microphone again. He says to Nana, hey, you know, this ain't Hollywood. You're not Eddie Murphy. And this isn't Coming to America. The match was on, and they're going at it. But then all of a sudden, Tony DeVito from ECW's Baldies comes to the ring, attacks Nana. But then out comes the late Balls Mahoney. Nana chases Ivan to the back, and Mahoney has a match with DeVito right then and there. But then eventually, Ivan and Nana come back to the ring, and where those two matches, by the way, ended up in no contest. Mahoney talks something over with Nana, and Mahoney put out a challenge for a tag match at the next show, where if Ivan and DeVito lost, they would have to put on a wig and wear wigs and women's dresses. And then Mahoney had Impact karaoke with the crowd with his entrance music, Big Balls. Then it was time for a Dream Partner tag team matchup, in which we see Disturbed Davey and Dragon. He comes to the ring. and announces his partner is fellow Dynasty member, the Prodigy, Tom Marquez. And out come their opponents, Matt Striker, and Striker announces his partner would be Abu Nai, who was ousted from the Dynasty earlier in the show, and pretty good tag match to get the match going. But then out came the late Tim Arson, and he attacked Abu Nai and pulled out from his singlet a Dynasty t-shirt, and he put it on. Damian and Dragon and Tom Marquez were victorious. Next up, it was a match for the Tag Team Championship, as we saw the full-blooded Italians, Little Guido and Tony Mamaluke, challenge the Hit Squad, Monster Mac and Mafia, who we know as Dan Moff. Very good match these two great tag teams had. Eventually, the Hit Squad defeated the FBI to retain the Tag Team Championship, as Moff, he pinned Mamaluke with the Burning Hammer to retain the Tag Team Championship. Then it was main event time. As the all-around, this is, I guess, why it was built an Ultimate Jeopardy matchup. As Northeastern champion, the all-around best Xavier and Chris Divine took on heavyweight champion Low Ki and Boogaloo. Initially, this match was supposed to be Low Ki and the notorious 187 Homicide, but Homicide, I think, might have been on a tour of Japan at the time and couldn't do the show, and that's why Boogaloo ended up taking his place. Low Ki, at that time, was the buzz of independent wrestling. And boy, that night, he really took it to Chris Divine to the point where Divine was basically, after the match was over, he was limp as a biscuit. Eventually, Low Ki and Xavier pull a ladder from underneath the ring while Boogaloo and Divine are brawling in the ring. Low Ki and Xavier like playing tug of war with the ladder, and they end up knocking their partners down, and the referee stopped the match for some reason. Jack Sabbath comes out with a Dynasty t-shirt, and he's got the microphone. He says, "Low Ki, I knew you were Dynasty material." Low Ki's looking at the Dynasty shirt, then he's looking to the crowd. Low Ki looks at Jack and says, "Whoever said I was a part of the Dynasty?" And then Jack's attacked from behind by Xavier, and Low Ki gives Sabbath the key crusher. Xavier climbs the top rope, hits a 450 splash on Sabbath, and eventually Damian Dragon and Tim Arson, they come out, and I think they got bashed in their heads by Xavier and Low Ki with their respective championships. And Low Ki and Xavier ended up leaving the ring together. So that was, quite a night of action right there. The videotape ended with commentator El Shoes, and I forgot who the other guy was. It wasn't Rob, aka Nick Knowledge. Forgot the guy's name, but they kind of did like a little outro at the end where Shoes says, "We'll see you next time." And the guy says his name, and Shoes says, "No, you're not." And then they show the Xavier and Low Ki do a promo together saying that ICW would not have reached the plateau if it weren't for the two of them. And then that's how the videotape ended. This was a pretty good show, by the way, that I was at, folks. So I'm glad I got to finally do this review of ICW from April of 2002. Darn, I'm feeling old as a longtime independent wrestling fan. So, leave your comments if you were at this show or not, but I don't think too many of the ICW fans of that time that are at the shows today. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, there were like so many signs at this very show. As I mentioned earlier, the one sign that Crazy Ivan ripped up said Crazy Ivan is a little bitch. One sign said Billy and Chuck fear Christopher Street. One sign said Jeff Hardy fears the Shuton Bomb. Lowrider is a juggalo. There was one sign said balls for Prez. I'm trying to think. Yeah, and I guess someone had nothing better to do with their time. somebody had a sign and they had the audacity to show it. It said, "My figures put on a better show." What's the point of doing that? If why even buy a ticket and come to the fucking show then? If you feel your figures put on a better show, that was a fucking insult in my opinion. So again, leave your comments. Let me know what you all thought, and I hope to have more ICW VHS and hopefully, well, I don't know about maybe some DVD reviews in the future. Hope you enjoyed this, folks.